thanks so much to Jen and Amoeba for hosting me today. I see a lot of friends in the audience today, so I want to give a wave to those that some I haven't talked to in a long time. Hello, Arno. And to new friends that I have yet to meet. I don't like to just be a talking head for a half an hour, so please put your questions in the chat. Feel free to let me know that you want more information about a particular topic or that something was confusing. Please don't hesitate. I like an interactive webinar. So I'm going to start by telling you just a little bit about me, and then we'll jump into crowdfunding. I started in this space over 10 years ago and have grown with it from when no one knew about it to now, we're here talking about it today. So I have a deep love for all types of crowdfunding, and we'll talk about those types. And I also have a deep love for local. So I would love to see more businesses in local communities using crowdfunding. And Jen was kind enough to forward me some of your questions. So I'm going to try and address those within, but if I don't get there, just give a little nod to me. I just looked and somehow I forwarded my slides all the way to the end. So before I share them, let me get back to the beginning. Here we go. There we are. We're back at the beginning. So we only have a short time. This is a high level overview of crowdfunding. I probably won't get to everything, but let's just start with the basics since I see so many of you are pretty new to crowdfunding. I love that, in fact, because that means that more people are coming to crowdfunding when they show up for webinars, and I'm a former teacher, so this is my bliss. The place to start when we're talking about crowdfunding is to reframe it, right? And so I'm going to say, let go of everything you think you know about crowdfunding and think about the words community capital. Think about individuals rather than big institutions. Think about networks rather than funding, because ultimately that is what is functioning here. And that crowdfunding is about a lot more than just money. And it's about a lot more than just the funding when the campaign closes. It is something that builds momentum. But ultimately, I like to think about crowdfunding as old-fashioned barn raising using new digital tools. Our communities have been crowdfunding effectively for hundreds, probably thousands of years, pooling resources in order to make projects happen, businesses happen, frankly, communities happen. So if you are unfamiliar with crowdfunding, the term, just think about communities getting together and taking on helping someone raise a barn, which was a very expensive and labor-intensive thing to do. But when the community got together, all of these individuals, many hands make light work. So how does it, technically work, right? You could have a business that needs $10,000, or your organization could need to raise $10,000. Sure, you could go to one funder or one individual, but you could have 10 people invest $1,000 in the business. You could have 100 people pre-buy a $100 product, or 1,000 people donate $10. The math still works out. It's still $10,000. And that is at the heart of crowdfunding, small amounts of money from a large number of people rather than one institution or a bank or a single investor. But it's not just about financial capital. It's also about communities gathering their social capital, their creative capital alongside. So when businesses or organizations enter into crowdfunding, the capital is more than money. And Arno, this will look really familiar to you because this is a graphic that was inspired you can see I've credited in Vestibule over there. But what is crowdfunding doing? We have external sources of capital, like venture capital and big banks. They're located outside of communities generally, right? We don't have a lot of community banks inside our communities. Or there are big institutions that, perhaps are not on the ground in the community and don't quite understand what the community values. And so crowdfunding or community capital, whatever term you would like to use, because it's all the same to me, it's about individuals from the community putting their resources together. And what we're looking at is not a small amount of capital. In 2021, we're talking about over $1 billion just in business types of crowdfunding. So not including donation, personal causes, or nonprofits, just in capital going to businesses. And for me, the exciting thing is when you change the funders, you change who gets funded. The map of the US, when you look at who gets funding, all of a sudden there's dots all over the US map. When you look at groups of individuals who normally are, have difficulty with traditional capital, whether those are women entrepreneurs or minority entrepreneurs, they're seeing much higher success rates of raising capital when the pool of contributors are people, right? And they reflect the actual demographics of the world, right? 51% female. Well, so if you are a product that is looking to serve women, you now have 51% of the population as a potential supporter. I also really like to think of crowdfunding as the new ballot box. So it's not just about money, it's about voting for what you want to see in your community. So I feel that crowdfunding offers us, the individual, the power to choose what gets made, who makes it, and who benefits. So do we want the financial benefits to stay in the community, or are those benefits going to go to an investor who lives outside of the community? Our community knows what needs to be in our community, and an investor or a bank outside may not understand the value of a particular business or organization. So I'm just going to check the chat to make sure that there were no questions.
No questions yet, but again, if anyone has a question, go ahead and put them in the chat. Lots of introductions. And Scott, thank you. He's here to help too. Yay.
Yeah, so if there's some questions, that's my partner Scott. He may just answer you in the chat. So let's just dig a little into how crowdfunding works by talking about how it doesn't work. It doesn't work by throwing up a campaign page and expecting people to just throw money at you. What it's really about is networks. It's not a crowd. Crowdfunding platforms don't create connections and relationships. You do. You, the campaign creator, you, the business owner, you're creating the connections. And what you're really doing is taking trust that you've built with the community or with your network, the character, and are you the person that everyone knows when you say you're going to do something, you do it? Or it's the business that, that brand recognition, because everyone in the community loves that business, right? It's been there for, 20 years, and they want to open a second location. And, everyone in the community knows this is a fantastic business and they're here to stay. So it's about transferring social capital into financial capital. But what usually happens when people approach crowdfunding, because there's this magic around, like I throw up a page and people, throw money at me, is that they have this really unsuccessful workflow. And so I want to show it to you so you can avoid it. And so you can help all the businesses and organizations that you work with. If nothing else, understanding this and flipping it can help you be more successful in crowdfunding, which is that people often Google crowdfunding, they pick a platform, they create their page, they launch their campaign, and only then do they think about who they're going to market their campaign to. They get discouraged because those people don't want an email that says, back my campaign with no context. They don't want the first time they've talked to someone in 2 years to be them asking for money. So they get discouraged. That's often when I see them, and others on this call who work in crowdfunding, will say that's when they contact us. Oh, I'm 2 weeks into my campaign and I haven't raised any money. The campaign doesn't fund because they've missed a really important step. And then they say crowdfunding doesn't work. So if you find someone who says crowdfunding doesn't work, ask them if they did this. Ask them if this was their process. And so, I'm going to share with you, our process flips this script, because we look at crowdfunding as a business and organizational development tool. It's not just about money. It's about strengthening the foundations of your business, your organization, how you communicate. So the first thing, you're doing that right now. You're already starting to learn what works, right? And then you have to think about strategy. There are different types of crowdfunding. There are different metrics you can look at to see, is this goal reasonable? Do I have the community I need to raise this capital? And if not, think about how can you grow your network? How can you better prepare your marketing foundations, which is step 3. Then, wait, look at this. The campaign page, the platform is at the end of the process, because all of this, step 1, 2, 3, can be happening before you even create a campaign page. And then you launch. And when you've done all this preparation, then you're in a position to succeed. And when you do the work leading up to launch, it also allows you to take advantage of what I call the multiple bottom line of crowdfunding, right? If you are thinking about telling your story, building your network, how you're going to communicate with people, then you're going to have a more effective journey for collecting all of that non-financial value that crowdfunding can provide. If you're a business and you have a product, you can get proof of concept or, market test. You can get customer feedback. It is a great way to get community buy-in. You may have an idea, but you're not so sure that the community wants the idea that you've put forward. And before you go through all of this work, can you go out and have a tool for getting more than what I'll call, like when you say to someone, hey, what do you think of this idea? And they go, oh, it's great. Now ask them to put money behind it. You'll find out how they really feel about it, right? Then you'll really find out if it's something that they feel strongly about. It helps with finding partners. Often we as business owners and directors of organizations, we forget to tell people what we're doing. And crowdfunding creates, if you do it well, and I know I'm going to wave at the local crowd here, one of my colleagues in the space. If you do it well and you think about communicating over your campaign, what if you just continue that after, right? And now you've built habits through crowdfunding that will help you not just for this moment, but down the road. So let's talk about those different types. Let's talk about what can you crowdfund. And the thing is, there are different boxes and different names for them, but in essence, they fall in these 4 categories. And the reason I want to spend some time here is because the way the media talks, they usually blanket statement crowdfunding, or they'll only talk about investment crowdfunding, and it gets very, very confusing because they function differently. So I wanted to take a little time to explain. So you've probably seen investment crowdfunding before if you've ever seen a GoFundMe campaign, donation crowdfunding. It's fundamentally personal needs or causes, right? So individuals and nonprofits. So you can see there's the personal cause campaign support for the Gonzalez family. But if you're a nonprofit, you can also use donation crowdfunding to raise funds for your organization. And so the campaign example on the bottom there is the Unity Alliance of Southern Idaho. And as opposed to using crowdfunding as a capital campaign, right, your main source, crowdfunding for nonprofits is a really great tool for projects. For we want to do a new project, a specific thing. And then you can go out and get support from the community, maybe for something you don't have a grant for, maybe something that you need additional funding for. And again, get that community buy-in for that project as well. I also wanted to just point quickly to a different approach to crowdfunding, which is thinking about it for civic projects, right? So the community, this is an example, this is the Michigan Economic Development Corporation has this program where the community can source civic projects that they would like to see in their community. Maybe there's not local funding for, and they crowdfund half of it. Right. And they get the community to buy in both financially and emotionally. And then the Michigan Economic Development Corp matches those funds. And an interesting thing that they've discovered is that the places that are funded through this program get taken care of by the community because the community has bought in to it and feels connected to it differently from if it was just funded and accomplished, over here by one or two people. There's also a type of crowdfunding that allows businesses to get no interest loans up to $15,000 from their community rather than a bank. So these are microloans through a platform called Kiva. So this is a great tool for a business that has some revenue, might want to buy a piece of equipment. That's a pretty sweet deal, up to $15,000 at 0% interest. But here it's not a bank, it's the community that is lending that capital. There's rewards or perks or pledge crowdfunding, pick your name, it's all the same thing. Your supporters do not become investors in your business. They are contributing in exchange for a reward or perk, or as I'll talk about in a second, because they want to support businesses who are growing in the community. So who can use it? Individuals, pre-startups, startups, like this is the most like anybody can use this if you have a community that wants to support what you're trying to create. And I've put a few examples of local community campaigns here. You've probably seen Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and they're pre-selling a product, but I wanted to focus here on businesses that are located in communities. And I told you I was going to wave at the local crowd because these two campaigns on the left are, they were hosted on the local crowd, which is a platform. And so we have here a stone mill for Mill Hollow. This is a very rural project in a smaller, well, you could probably talk about it, Jen, better than I can. It's in your neck of the woods. But you're talking about a bakery going to their community. I love this story because the bakery doesn't even have a cash register, and yet crowdfunding worked for them, right? So you don't decide, don't make decisions. Let people go on their journey. Boise Music Lessons was a client of ours. It's a community-based business. They teach music education from their home, and they wanted to create a space in their backyard that would be a little more weatherproof, where they could teach larger groups. And they went to their community and their students, and they raised over $20,000 to expand their business. And the thing, to note there is a lot of what they offered, so like rewards, they were not physical, tangible things. They allowed naming rights of their community fire pit where they sit and play guitar, and they allowed naming rights of the structure itself. And so when we say rewards, we don't also have to mean physical, tangible things. What people value, and they also offered, was an experience, right? So you can expand that. And then to show a more urban example, Keeps Lawson Fresh. This was in South Los Angeles, a group of a group of people who wanted to preserve this healthy food spot, and they went to the community to raise the capital to begin to renovate and to make this. And because I think there's a whole bunch of book related folks on this call today, and someone had asked a question and said they wanted to raise money for a bookmobile, I thought I would share this example of one of our clients who wanted to create, as she put it, a bookstore on wheels with ice cream truck vibes that would attract the community 2 books. And in this case, she's very specifically working with the Black community. And she, got her community excited. She really expanded her network before the launch of this campaign. And so you can see on the right-hand side there, that's Natalie, and that is her bookmobile, which is now traveling around. This project was based in Indianapolis, but she's going pretty much all around the Midwest right now, bringing books to schools and events. And this was, that bus was an empty shell before her crowdfunding campaign. So everything you see there was made possible by her community. And then the last piece, and this is the new kid on the block, I'll say on the federal level, is investment crowdfunding. So this is where you have individuals investing in businesses. And this is the only instance where the person who backs becomes an investor. But I want to point out that it's not just equity that can be raised via investment crowdfunding. Businesses can offer term loans, revenue shares, convertible notes, any legal security, any legal investment offering. And so, there's questions about, is it just for, high growth tech companies? Absolutely not. There's different types of investment crowdfunding. The one that is often most in reach is regulation crowdfunding. That allows businesses to raise up to $5 million per year. And the exciting thing is, prior to these exemptions, it wasn't impossible for the everyday person to invest. There were state rules, but it was expensive and it was really limited to high net worth individuals. But now anyone 18 or over can invest in private businesses in their community. So I pulled up a few examples here that are more community based. So everything from the Pittsburgh Juice Company, that was a term loan. Nightshade Noodles, that's a revenue share where the investors would be paid back a % of revenue. And in fact, this is their second crowdfunding campaign. I believe that they did another one. We have brewing and distilling, that's very popular with investment crowdfunding. And then just to give you like a really big, local, Hempitecture is a hemp insulation company, but this is an economic development project that was sponsored by various organizations in Idaho, and they created jobs in the local community of Jerome, Idaho, with this facility. So it is both economic development and supporting the local community, even as it's this big manufacturing company. And if all that felt a little overwhelming, if you sign up for our newsletter, you can get our cheat sheet, which will give you the different types of crowdfunding, who's it for, what are the fee structures, and then a list of platforms that we have spent a lot of time working with or have a really solid reputation, because I know it feels like the Wild West out there. So before I open up for questions, I want to make my plea for crowdfunding. It only works if we all participate. So if you're thinking about crowdfunding and you've never backed a campaign before, please become part of the community of givers before you make your ask. Not only is it good karma, right? I'm going to go ask, shouldn't I participate? But the best education you can give yourself on what works in crowdfunding is to go out there and look at campaigns and see and feel it for yourself. When you go to a page, what works, what doesn't work? Why do you feel connected to one story and not another? All of that will give you a lot of information that, it would take me hours and hours to communicate, but you can have that experience by going and deciding for yourself, is this a business or a campaign that I want to support? All right. This is me, Kathleen. You can reach out to us on Crowdfund Better. If you reach out, you'll get Scott. He'll make sure you get routed to the right things. But I really want to get to the questions, so I'm going to stop my share because I want to see all of you, and then I'll pop into. I'm going to look in the chat, but if you want to help me, Jen, I would Greatly appreciate it. And I just want to say, can I toot her horn here about crowdfunding? I'd like to toot Jen's horn. She asked me to come and to do this, but she is one of the most experienced local crowdfunding, people who is working in community. So I just want to give her a shout out and a thank you for everything she has been doing up there in Keene.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's definitely because of a lot of people on this call. I've learned from the best. I just backed up to Arno. He had more of a comment, I believe, but just wanting to acknowledge what he wrote. When musicians launch a new album, they have already a supporting tour planned. Authors have a book tour planned. In crowdfunding, you need to have a community tour planned before the launch.
Here, Arno. I have a colleague who says you can't crowdfund without a crowd, right? Like it's right there in the word. But it's not really a crowd. That's the only reason I don't love that. Strangers, people on the street need to see your community show up. That's the other little magic piece, right? There's this number, 30%. And until you reach that, people who don't know you are going to wonder why your friends and why your community didn't jump in to support you right away. Like, what's up with this? Is this a person who doesn't keep their word? Is this not a sound business? So getting that network, your network excited and showing up for you really early. That's another thing, having them there, ready. I call them launch leaders, those people who are there on day one and they put their money in the campaign and they comment in the chat and they are saying, I love this business and, support them. So, and yes, and then Scott, yes, political campaigns. Thank you, Scott. You can think of it in that same light.
Great. Joseph asked a really cut right to the chase here. I have over 1,500 on Twitter, equal on Facebook, on Constant Contact or LinkedIn. What are the chances?
Hi, Joseph. So what are I'm going to ask a very specific question. What's your number on Constant Contact? If you want to come off mute, please do.
It's right at 1,000. All
right. Do you know your click rate? How many people click on your communications?
Oh, I do, but I don't.
Right. So, but you know what a click rate is. So
right. Yes, I know what it is. Right.
So I'm going to share a little secret about what's going on in social media right now, right? A lot of people think that you post it to social media and people come running. And really, in the last couple of years, we have seen an incredible decrease in conversion to crowdfunding contributions on social media because of the way the algorithms are. So that's why I asked about email, Joseph, because that is your best tool. Crowdfunding email marketing converts 34% more than any other digital marketing tool to a crowdfunding contribution. And if you look at your click rate, is why I asked about that. That's the people who are clicking on the links that you currently put in your newsletter or your communication. If they're going to back your campaign, they're going to have to click. So the best approximation I could give you today is look at your click rate. What percentage of your list is that? That's about where you are in terms of people who might back your campaign, best case scenario. Does that make sense? If I lost anyone, it could be more, it could be less. You might have an incredible personal network and send out communications personally and have an incredible show of support. But if those numbers are looking low, then you have to grow the community or bring them closer so that they're clicking on everything you send, right? So that they're just leaned in. I like to say, if you can get people to lean in so far that their wallet, the wallet just kind of falls into your campaign, that's kind of what you want. By the time you ask, they're like, take my money, right? I'm all in, or they're asking you, where's the link? Send it to me now. So that's, what's your chance? And I think, and I, open the floor here to, also for others who are in the industry. There's a few other faces. Hello, Devin Thorpe. the experience is also of setting expectations, right? So if you look at your list now, Joseph, and it's not where you would, you're not seeing that you can raise what you want to raise. Could you raise a smaller amount for a smaller project and then use that to build momentum? Crowdfunding is not a one and done. So when you build that community, if you keep them posted and you show them how you're using the money and you keep them close, that relationship, you can go back out again and ask them again. It's not like I've asked them and now I can never ask them again. Not if you're fulfilling what you promised with your campaign. I don't know. Anyone else want to chime in on that? I see too many smart people in this room. I don't necessarily want to be the talking head alone. All right, I'm going to read the comments here. Anybody else?
Yeah, so Pat asked, they represent a Chamber of Commerce and an urban renewal authority in Southern Colorado. Any examples of like organizations spearheading a local crowdfunding campaign?
So Chamber of Commerce, and what was the other? The
Urban Renewal Authority in Southern Colorado. I merged that all into two words.
So where we have seen some support is in supporting the education and training around crowdfunding so this is my question. It's like, what can you do to support the community if they want to crowdfund? So let's widen your question just a little bit, right? I'll start with, you can back their campaign. Let's start with that. You can amplify what's going on in your community. Remember, it's all about networks. So that chamber probably has a huge list, an email list. And we just talked about how important email is. Can you help amplify what is already going on in the community? And then how can you support education and training? Crowdfunding isn't intuitive. It seems like it should be, but there is a process. There's a lot of art and science, as you would say, Diane Santum over there. So, helping people to understand, don't just run to a platform and post. Take a minute, look at your network. So we have seen foundations and philanthropic organizations supporting entrepreneurs in this process, and we see better results when they get that training. So Natalie, who I gave you as an example, the mobile bookstore, she worked with us through a grant-funded program. It was the JLH Fund. It was funded by Drew and Lauren Holiday. They're based in Milwaukee. He's a NBA ball player, and she's a former World Cup soccer player. And they funded a program to train 25 Black entrepreneurs in crowdfunding. And we saw such higher success rates with that training. So I don't know if I answered your question. If I didn't, please, come back in the comments, come off mute, let's talk.
I'll come off mute. Hey, everybody. Good to see everybody. And well, I'm most interested. I'm tracking with you where you were though, but I'm most interested in, is there a way for a Chamber of Commerce and Urban Renewal Authority trying to actually do things to spearhead, to actually be active on a platform and make that a membership benefit? If you have a business, if you're starting a business, come to the chamber. We will rally our members to invest in your campaign, invest in some initiative at the school, invest in something that's going on, invest in buying a building that can actually be rehabilitated or moved from blight. Actually taking a more platform role. Mm-hmm. So are there platforms out there that would allow an organization to say, we're going to actually spearhead, not do a campaign, but we're going to actually be in that kind of realm. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm going to pass to Diane in 1 second because you actually have a solution on the call today. So there's different types of crowdfunding. So let me just back it up. They have different rules, right? So I'm gonna send you over to take Diane, have Diane speak about her platform, which can help with donation and rewards crowdfunding, and then I'll wrap around on the investment side. So take it away, Diane.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Pat, for the question, because that's exactly what we built the local crowd for, is to be hosted in a community by an organization like a chamber or a renewal development agency. And then it becomes, like you said, you're in Southern Colorado, so it could be the local crowd SoCo or something, whatever you would want, but it'd be exactly that, your localized platform that you can go around to your community and say, hey, post your campaign on this platform. And then you can spring load the contributors. Because one of the things that we also know about crowdfunding is, and like Kathleen so well told you, that the crowd doesn't show up unless you bring them, unless you get them to come. And so when you have a whole community, all your chamber people and everything knowing, oh, there's a campaign on the local crowd SoCo, then that will bring the first tier. And then that could, if you don't get the first tier of people coming to your campaign, you're not going to get the second tier and the third tier. So it's really designed to have that local kingpin to get it going and to support local businesses. And Jen, as Caitlin or Kathleen also mentioned, Jen's doing this in her community. She has a platform there that is really already, it's been going like 5 years. It does take some time to get it where people say, oh, that's a local crowd campaign. And then they support each other and it becomes all that social capital building, all that financial capital building, that creative capital building happening right there in that beautiful little nut that is your community. So thanks for letting me jump in there.
No, excellent. I already made a note. I made a note earlier on the local crowd, and so we'll be following up there. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So Pat, I'm just going to redirect a little bit because I talked about investment crowdfunding. That's a little trickier because you have to be a FINRA approved regulation crowdfunding portal to host those campaigns. But you as the chamber could aggregate campaigns that are on those FINRA portals on a page on your website. Do you know what I mean? You could become an aggregator so that you could have the local crowd. And I don't know, Diane, if there's some way that could get wrapped into the local crowd. I'll leave you to talk to Pat about those specifics. But there's a way to just redirect the community to those campaigns that are happening on those investment portals because they are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it's a little more of a due diligence, legal and financial. But investment can be incredibly powerful, like you said, for buying a building. Rewards and donation crowdfunding campaigns generally top out at about 50K, sometimes more, right? But that's sort of the top. And there's outliers. The averages in the investment crowdfunding space, fall at about 250K. So you can see when people are investing $1,000 versus making a $25 contribution, you have those economies of scale. So, if there's more, information, we can absolutely have a conversation offline on that. And, I will wave. I got to wave over. Devin, you're not on camera, but I'm going to wave at you because Devin is the president of the Crowdfunding Professionals Association that is doing incredible work in the investment space. So he's a guy to know. I'm just going to wave. I'm waving at you, Devin, even if you're just saying hello in the chat.
Kathleen, I'd also like to follow up in regards to maybe a side factor. This is Scott from your team here in Crowdfund Better. In regards to Pat's question, there's also examples of municipal crowdfunding. Do you want to touch on that at all? That's maybe not a direct connect with what the local crowd's doing, but it's also not far from it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
if that's something...
I talked about the platform is Patronicity. That's who is doing those civic crowdfunding campaigns and working with economic development.
Can I have that link? Can you drop that link in the chat, please?
I'll do.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks,
And we'll
Scott.
definitely follow up with other links as well when we send out this recording for folks, because I know there's a lot of rich information. Rebecca asked one of those questions that is kind of like asking you who your favorite child is, perhaps. But do you have a crowdfunding platform that you prefer?
that is, we are platform agnostic, and, you can look at Diane, you can ask, is that true? Do we have platforms that we work with who share our philosophy? Absolutely. Who are more focused on local? There are definitely platforms that are more focused on local. I'm not going to name names here, but here's how you know. Just go and take that cheat sheet and look. You'll see who's in local. You'll see who shares your values. The thing I will say is people get hung up on the brand names. They get hung up on the big name campaign platforms, thinking they are going to bring backers. 90%, if not more, of the our clients, who are mostly small business owners in the local community, they will tell you everyone but one person was someone I could tell you who they were, or they were on an email list, or I've had a conversation. So, I'll just throw out one of the big names. People are like, oh, I got to go on Kickstarter because all the Kickstarter people are going to back my campaign. I'm sorry to tell you the truth, unless you have like the greatest thing since sliced bread, like new, gadget, and you have spent, and I'm not kidding, 25% of what you want to raise on marketing. That's how much some of those $500,000 campaigns on Kickstarter are spending. That will not be the general rule for local community campaigns. So it doesn't matter in terms of platform, in terms of them bringing you backers. You know what it matters? It matters on your user experience as a campaign creator. So go and, and sign up. And what's that process like? That alone will teach you something. Do they have live help, or is it all bots? Because there's a lot of you will never speak to a human being. I promise you, if you go over to the local crowd, you speak to a human being. If you need one, they'll email you, they'll wave at you. So some of these, we'll call them smaller platforms, have a lot more high touch than some of the bigger name platforms. So I always tell my clients to shop. Take the bigger platform, go sign up and experience what that looks like. Go back a campaign on that platform. What is it like as a backer or an investor, right? That's just as important. And then go explore, some of the smaller, more niche platforms. And what's that experience like? It's not always better. I'm not going to say it's always better. Sometimes the technology isn't as sleek. If that matters to you, then go with a bigger name. If you want a higher touch, then I would check out some of the smaller platforms. Did I do that as politically as possible?
You did great. Thank you. Thank you. That was such insight without slamming anyone. So you did really good.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
That's
Can I ask
great.
a quick question?
Who was that?
Oh, that's me, Cameo.
Oh, go right ahead.
Yeah, so when we say like platforms that have a higher touch, what do we mean in reference to that?
So, for example, some of the very large platforms, if you have a technical question or need support, they're going to send you to their FAQ first, and you might interact with a chat bot, right? And you're still having problems, and they're going to be emailing a support at, and I have had this experience where I just get we think this is the question you want us to answer. Their volumes are really high. So they've developed systems to try and manage that.
Okay, I gotcha.
So if you want a human being to read your question and write you a human reply, that's the high touch. If you want someone, if you're stuck, and there's also platforms like the local crowd that build some training in. So there's not just like, here, throw your page up. There's a process and there's some education. So that's the difference. And so that's why I was like, go and explore. I know John is here from one of the investment portals that's focusing on social impact. If you want to give a wave there, John, and he's a smaller niche platform. So, they're looking to support you. That's the benefit. And he's focused on social impact, which I would imagine many of your local campaigns would have something to do there. And so you're welcome, John, to I don't know if you already did, throw your link in there so people can explore what you've got going on.
I know Kathy had a question, a specific question about, the type of platform that would fit for her, but she had to hop off. But is there a list of some of these smaller, high touch crowdfunding platforms that people might want to check out?
Yeah, I'm going to have Scott, if you would, the reason we want you to sign up to our newsletter is we update this list. And if you sign up to the newsletter, you're going to get the updated list. We only send a newsletter quarterly. We will not bombard your inbox. Truly, it's once a quarter. But we're also working with, and this was brought up, we are working to train advisors. So I'm also going to make a little pitch here, which is we are talking very specifically with small business development centers, women's business centers, incubators, and accelerators. The thing that we don't have are a lot of people who are in our communities who understand crowdfunding and can support people. We don't have a lot of gens in our communities. So we've built a training program to empower the people who work with small businesses and work in the community with knowledge about crowdfunding, with tools to help them guide businesses to the proper type platform and to help them be more successful. We want to connect with those people in your communities, because if they are, have an awareness and are educated about crowdfunding, you can lean on them. And that is what they do, right? The SBDC advisors, they provide free counseling. And if they understand crowdfunding, then they can provide that support to small businesses in your community. So thank you for that little pitch. It's really important to me because there's only a handful of us who are doing this work, and we need more people to support your efforts. But in terms of, if you sign up for the newsletter, I don't know, Scott, can you throw that link in the chat there? You will immediately get an email which says download the cheat sheet here. There's also a self-assessment, is crowdfunding for me? It's just 5 questions. And so whether it's you or someone you're working with, it's a real simple mindset and approach that's like either a yes or a no initially. Like first question is, am I willing to ask people for money? If you're not, and you're not willing to get comfortable, maybe crowdfunding is not for you. And that's not so obvious to people because they think that they just put their page up and they don't have to go and ask anyone for support.
We are approaching the top of the hour, but I know, Arno, you've been sharing some questions and some thoughts. You had asked a question about a crowdfunding bubble. I don't know if you want to come off mute and just.
Oh, sure. Oh, I want to hear this question. Please come off mute.
Yeah, hi.
Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So yesterday, so I'm a frequent crowdfunding an investor, both on Kiva, grants, all of the different models. And for me, it's mostly about supporting community ventures. So yesterday, I got actually a notification from one of the big platforms. Oh, somebody paid you money back. So I was frolicking about that message. But the problem is these type of money coming back is more the exception than the rule. And so we since 2016, when it started, we all have been focusing on how do we create the money in flow for the businesses. And there's very little evidence that it actually comes back in a lot of forms. There's some in loans and revenue shares. Kiva has worked for me, but you never get more than you, of course, to pay in because it's 0%. But I think the crowdfunding community, and I'm talking to the big platforms about this, they're building kind of a bubble because at some point people will ask, is that actually working for the funders? And if it doesn't work, then the funding, the inflow also dries up if that becomes famous and like New York Times or Wall Street like issues a big report how much money people have been losing there. So we need to be thinking about the return trip of the money as you plan your campaign. And a big shout out also want to make there is we need to double click on the investment models, because a lot of like the safes and convertible notes that are like the vast majority on most platforms, they just have been copied from the VC culture in Silicon Valley, and they don't work for most local businesses because they don't plan IPOs or hopefully don't get bought by larger corporations. And in those convertible notes and safe campaigns, usually people haven't been seeing money coming back, and it's just they just become agreements that they can wallpaper their home office with.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Arno. I mean, you can't, it's no good to hide like what's happening. It's a part of why we are looking to work with small business advisors. So for example, I'm working with the regional director here in Boise of the SBDC. And when we pair her work with really dialing into the business plan, the financial projections, the overall financial outlook for the business and how they hope to generate revenue, if you put that before the crowdfunding process, then you have businesses that know what the future might look like. And so we have a lot of businesses that are going to crowdfunding without the proper business fundamentals. So that's our effort to combat that, is very much going and educating the people who are doing the real work, the real, like getting in there, like you said, looking at the business model. Is this going to be profitable? And is this the correct security, right? Don't need to do a safe. If you could do a revenue share where you could just, you don't have to pay it back today, but, as you generate revenue. And I think this is where we have two worlds in crowdfunding, and I'm in one world in this room right here. And I'm going to say to you, you are so important to this industry, to this ecosystem. I'm going to can I throw flashing lights around? Because we're all doing much smaller campaigns. They're not going to necessarily be $5 million raises. We're going to have a lot of smaller raises, but we know the impact of those raises. So the more of those, we might not beat the numbers in terms of amount raised, but we can really bring it home in terms of how many offerings, how many businesses are being funded from the community. And that's the groundswell we really need for the local piece of this crowdfunding movement, is to have it happening in communities. And, Arno, I know you've been working in this space for a long time prior to crowdfunding. So, I'm gonna give, all the props to Arno for the work he's been doing in the community with local before these regulations came to be. So you've seen a lot, but it's about what you just did today. You came and you learned. And if you want to learn more, you can always reach out to us. We are about to, in terms of that, investment, we're about to launch an online course that just said it's making sense of regulation crowdfunding. It is, I don't have any experience raising investment. And it walks you through terms like, what is a security? Who is an issuer, right? I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And honestly, I'm sitting in a room with the people who can really make it happen and create, the businesses that I've invested in, like you, Arno, I've had, term loans paid back. I've had revenue shares start generating revenue for me. And I'm going to, again, you're not off the camera, Devin, but I'm calling you in. Devin has a group called the Impact Cherubs, and it's a group of people who meet and they're looking at making small investments, in companies, and together as a group, they're not making the investment together. Everyone is deciding on their own, but they're looking at some of these financials and some of this the things as an investor you might want to look at. So there are people who are also trying to educate on the investor side as well, to bring the local community to these kinds of offerings. And, Devin, if you want to add anything in the chat to let people know where they can find the Impact Cherubs, I'm sure Jen wouldn't mind. We should probably talk more offline, Arno. I'd love to.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you do, and also highlighting that the first question should not be what's the good crowdfunding platform, because then people just take care of this. But you have to think about the community first, and also you have to think about the community, what's in it for community. You cannot just treat community as the cow where you go with your milk bucket and try to get some capital milk out of, what are you feeding that community back? And I think that's often been neglected, but I'm a big fan of what you do, and I'm each time a startup comes to me and asks for money in the slow money world, we ask them, well, are you also asking the community, or are you only asking rich people to wield their swagger, right? And I think, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. That's what local should be about.
Well, I like to say crowdfunding should make your friendships, your relationships, and the community stronger. And the only way that works is if we do not destroy trust in the process. And so I have found the local campaigns to be the ones, you know, you can see, touch the business, you know, the people. And so it's a lot easier to make that decision, and also a lot easier to say, I don't care if I get the money back. I just want to support this whatever. And you know, it's not something that's, you know, way outside of, you know, your everyday experience. But I'm going to pass it right back to you, Jen, because I see we're right about there.
Yes, we are. So just a reminder, we're going to send you all the recording. I'll send you lots of links so you can make sure to get on everyone's newsletter list and feel out different platforms and learn from each other. But if there are other questions you didn't get a chance to ask, follow up me, reply to the email I'm going to send you tomorrow. And thank you, Kathleen and Scott, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And we want to have follow-up events related to this topic. So bring on your questions and have a great rest of your day.